นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะAparuta sangamata satavaraye sorvanta bamunchantu satang. So, welcome everyone. A lot of people today. And I think many of you from Ajahn Majiro's retreat. Your mind's all cleansed from defilements. So the title of today is Who Needs Enlightenment When I Have My Opinions? I don't think up these titles, so but it's just like investigating concepts, words, because we're so bound and limited by our attachment to ideas and definitions, perceptions that we operate from and seldom question or investigate. So that's why, the ignorance, avijja in this Buddhist term of not knowing, not understanding Dhamma, is the way the world is. It operates from its own concepts, ideas, perceptions, cultural attitudes, opinions and views. And religions do this, and nations and tribes and classes and movements, political movements and everything operates from this kind of conditioning. And then we incline one way or another, taking sides with if we're for something or against something. And this is, pointing to this, enlightenment, of course, is a word, another word, which can be, what do you really think enlightenment is? Is a word, the Buddha was enlightened. What do you think that really meant? And it's when somebody gets enlightened, can you get enlightened? Can I get enlightened? What is enlightenment? And of course, it is an English word, and it means different things to different people. Usually, it means like you've made the final step to be free from all delusion, or you're completely free from suffering and pain, misery, or it means that you're caught in a state of total bliss forevermore. And just investigating the use of the English word enlightenment, because we say the Buddha was enlightened. Now, if any bhikkhus, if we claim to be enlightened, then that's and we're not, then we have to disrobe. That's so any bhikkhu that goes around saying he's enlightened, beware. And then sometimes in the process of meditation, we go through stages where we think we're enlightened. I think all of us can have period moments, momentary feelings of knowing everything and being free from all delusion through meditation. And then we can assume that I'm enlightened because of that precious moment or insight. But when you really examine the conditioned realm, the point of the Buddha's teaching is not to operate from the conditioned position, but from the unconditioned. So it's it's not to take sides if there's enlightenment or there isn't, or I'm enlightened or I'm not enlightened, or was the Buddha fully enlightened or not enlightened? And that, because then we can only speculate, guess, because we're caught usually operating from the sense of an ego, a separate self, a person, a perception of something, with an ideal of enlightenment. And of course that's what the world is. It's all this illusory perception that we are convinced is our reality, the real world. And in Vipassana meditation, you're really exploring, investigating reality. Not just operating from doctrinal positions, Buddhist positions, or a teacher or a guru's statements or religious teaching. But when you really appreciate the teaching of the Buddha, it's not about doctrine or dogma or metaphysical truths that we operate from, but it's very what they call a priori style of investigation from the here and now. And that's what mindfulness is. It's the only escape hatch we have in this realm as human individuals to break out of the realm of conditionality, to get beyond it, to see through it, to understand it, to know it in a direct way. So then that is, so we're not operating from a belief or disbelief enlightenment, or that the Gautama, the Buddha of ancient India, was enlightened, and so was Sariputta, Moggallana, and according to the scriptures and the legends and the history. But the teaching is not about Gautama the Buddha, it's about Dhamma, the way things are. It's not kind of worshipping the Buddha as a historical sage, even though we feel this gratitude and respect. And the more you understand Dhamma, the more respect and trust you have in the teaching of the Buddha. But it's not a condition sine qua non for being a Buddhist or for practicing meditation, to believe in the Buddha. The first thing is to get the attitude of attentive attention, awareness, learning to tune in to the present moment and reflect. This reflective capacity that all human beings have is very much what the Buddha was pointing to in his teaching. It's a reflective style of teaching. Now then, opinions we can have good opinions, bad opinions, right opinions, wrong opinions, stupid opinions, very intelligent ones. But these are conditions. All opinions are conditions. Even the best opinions are still, in what they are in reality is a condition. And as not to mention the worst, most stupid and whatnot of opinions, have the same characteristic of impermanence and not self. So this is a way because in the Buddhist world, in any religion, probably you all had experience with the strong views, religious opinions that people have about who's right, who's wrong, what's sin and what isn't, and what's the real true way and what isn't, what is pagan and satanic and what is God's true way. Or the opinions about there isn't any God. There's in the Christopher Hitchens and so forth loves to go rattle on about making fun of Roman Catholics or whatever, because it's, seeing that anyone who believes in God is a bit stupid. But he's operating from the same position, grasping opinions. And so this very grasping is what we're able to witness to through mindfulness. Now this word mindfulness is the essence, is the key to the door, is the escape hatch from birth and death, from the realm of suffering. And so this is when this point really sinks in, when you really begin to get it and trust it, because it isn't anything at all. It's like no thing, nothing. It's not giving you a position to take or a doctrine to believe in or or to prove or disregard, but to examine. And we have various opinions, like in the Theravada school of Buddhism that we use here. I mean, we have our own conventional style, our own, the traditional forms that we inherited from the ancient times. So it's a tradition that's carried on from, we believe, from the time of the Buddha to the present moment. And so it's a tradition. And now examine this word tradition, because we're living at a time where tradition is usually mistrusted or resented or criticized, because this is an age here in modern day Britain where we're kind of throwing out all those things, old traditions, old customs and that, and the important emphasis is on self-expression, independence, and human rights, and everybody's opinion is equal. It's my opinion. I have a right to give you my opinion. And this is a free country, democracy. And so, this Irving that was giving opinions about there wasn't any Jewish Holocaust, I mean, he said, I have a right to my opinion. Well, he's right. Right is right. When we're a right to any opinion you want or have or grasp. But to know an opinion as an opinion is different. When you take idealism to its ultimate absurdity, then being free and asserting oneself and being free and having rights and everybody being equal, it's an ideal that we hold to. And then we operate, when we attach to an ideal, like an enlightenment can be an ideal. It can be so high, so good, so wonderful, that when we think about it as something so high that it's only special for special people, or maybe only the historical Buddha, maybe only Gautama Buddha I've heard people say he was the only enlightened human being. All the rest weren't. That's somebody's opinion. So then, this is an opinion that some people operate from. I've heard even in Thailand monks say it's impossible to get enlightened these days. One time I witnessed this myself. Some monks was with Hluang Po Cha, and some monks from this town of Ubon came to see him, and they said, well, you can't really even attain stream entry these days. You can't even, not to mention being fully enlightened. And Hluang Po Cha said, well, then why are you a monk? You just want free meals, don't you? He was good at making it with a smile on his face. But it was a good reflection, is the tradition just an end in itself? Or is how to use the tradition for enlightenment, for breaking through delusion? Not to become institutionalized, or become Theravadan Buddhists, or become Buddhist monks or nuns or anything on that level. It's not about becoming anything, but using conventions for investigating reality as we live it. So then we have traditional forms that are, part of the scriptural discipline, the Vinaya discipline, that has been able to carry the tradition through 2,553 years. So this tradition then has its, a lot of it has managed to survive, such as the tradition we try to operate from here at Amaravati, working within the structure, within the limitation of this very ancient tradition. But it's not to just be kind of like one who worships antiquity or tries to breathe life into a corpse. But it's actually a practical convention for reflection, for investigation. So one time, this was years ago, in the early years with Luang Por Chah, I was walking with him, and he said to me, Sumedho, you must find it confusing, sometimes, because Dhamma, it's all about letting go, not attaching to anything. And Vinaya is all about attaching. That's the discipline. Because we have this very strict discipline where you can do this, but you can't do that. It gets very fussy sometimes. It gets almost to absurdity, where if you get involved with monastic life, you have morning sugar and afternoon sugar. I mean, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. But you can't mix morning sugar with afternoon sugar. I mean, that's how detailed it can get. Now, and then of course those are the more kind of those are the very minor rules, but you get into the more heavy rules about, saying that you're an enlightened Buddha when you're not. That's disrobing. If you think you are, and you're misguided, you're not trying to delude people, you just maybe have this delusion. It's not a disrobing offense. But if you're deliberately lying people to get their praise and get them to follow you, then that would be, you'd have to disrobe. And same with killing another human being and stealing. These are disrobing offenses. Sexual intercourse is a disrobing offense. So this is what they call the heavy things, where they separate you from the Sangha. The rest are all remedies to deal with them. But the point of it is, how do we use convention in a religion? And I think this is very apropos to this time, because in like the Church of England, the Anglican Communion, and Roman Catholicism, we're all in the same boat, really, trying to make sense out of our traditional forms in a society that is so drastically changed in over 100 years. From the expectations, assumptions people made, say, 100 years ago, to the attitudes that we find common everywhere through the mass media, the internet, and countries, even the most remote countries now in parts of Africa or Central Asia and whatnot. We're all connected now in communication. And of course the values, the ideals of the West have a lot of influence and affects people very strongly, no matter what part of the world they live in, as well as the learning to live together on a planet that is now crowded. How are we going to live together? There are about 6 billion human beings now. And this, I imagine, is the most this planet has ever had. And when you look at charts of population growth, you realize that that the baby boomers, what they call after the Second World War, there's a noticeable increase of births all over the world, all over the planet. And before that, up through the 19th century to the first part of the 20th century, it was pretty, the population of the world was pretty much on the same level, births and deaths and things like that. It wasn't that much. And then after that, suddenly in the last 100 years, it's just escalated. And then due to modern media, mass media, transportation, everything brings us all together. So we're not just isolated in our little kingdoms or countries, our little tribal areas. Whether we like it or not, we're forced to live with each other. And yet it's a time where everybody's claiming independence, self-assertion, rights, and democracy, and opinions. My opinions count just as much as yours do, and so forth. So then, how do we deal with this? I'm not criticizing this, I'm just pointing it out as I see it, from my point of witnessing. How do we come to terms with human individuals that are attached to ideals and operate from the ideals, and then of course this gives us all a sense that there's something wrong all the time because life isn't ideal. This is not about idealism, this realm we're living in. It's about the way things are. And so the Dhamma teaching of the Buddha is pointing at the way things are. And this expression, the way things are, it's not saying, it has no critical emphasis whatsoever. It's not saying it should or shouldn't. When you get into should or shouldn't, then we get into wanting something. If it isn't the way we want it now, we know how it should be. And if it is the way we want it, we know we would like to keep it this way and not let it change. So this is what we can actually know in through mindfulness, through awareness, through investigation of Dhamma, not in terms of analysis or right or wrong or views or opinions of various individuals or religions or cultures. So this is like, within this human limitation, we're able to awaken. This awakenness this word is very, just contemplate this sense of awakening. And this is the very meaning of the word Buddha. Buddha, the word Buddha itself, Sanskrit Pali word, means awakened, a human individual awakened. So that's why, you can have the historic Buddha, Gautama the Buddha, who was born just like we were, had a human mother and father, and it wasn't, descended from deities up in the sky and brought down by a stork. Even though some of us were told we were brought into the world by a stork. But I don't think my mother ever meant me to take that seriously, because she definitely made it clear that she was my mother. But notice that this human form that we're experiencing, the gift of it, the blessing of our humanity, is our ability to awaken to it, to learn from it. From whatever conditions we find ourselves in. We don't need to have the best conditions or everything perfect in order to awaken to reality, to the truth. And this way it means that that there's nothing, whether you're disabled or young or old, male or female, whatever race, nationality or whatever, these are never obstructions to enlightenment. It's not about, it's not like a racism, isn't it, that a certain race is enlightened and the others are. That's an opinion, isn't it? Like anti-Semitism, isn't it, based on the prejudice against Jews is an opinion based on a cultural attitude or opinion that people hold without realizing what they're doing. Any kind of racial prejudice, or like at this time in Britain itself, the problems around Islamic terrorists and these kind of issues, where we form opinions about Muslims and prejudice against Muslims. We can create, a kind of anti-Muslim prejudice easily in this country. Because people are gullible. Most people don't really know. They aren't awakened, so they operate from fear and what they're kind of conditioned, programmed to hear and take sides with. And, this is speaking for myself. This is why, one of the reasons I became a Buddhist monk was because I could see, just this heavy conditioning that I had. It wasn't bad. I've come from good family and so forth. I'm not complaining about it. But it was based on a sense of how things should or shouldn't be, on ideals, and what's right and wrong, kind of fixed in cement, so this is right and this is wrong, absolutely right, absolutely wrong. And, everything was spelled out in terms of absolute opposites, and good and bad, and heaven and hell. And yet, in all of us, through that conditioning, there's a kind of sense of something more to life than just this program that we're instilled, that gets installed in our consciousness through the conditioning process. Through the cultural conditioning, the social conditioning, religious conditioning. And then we judge others. We tend to form opinions about, like in the Buddhist world, we can say, Buddhists can be as opinionated as anyone else. Theravada Buddhism is the real teaching. And, you ask, if you go to Sri Lanka or Thailand, I'm sure you'll ask some monks, they'll say, the other stuff, Mahayana, is not the real stuff. And then, and then Mahayana says, we're the higher teaching. And that makes Theravada look like it's, lower teaching. And so it goes on. Just notice how these words affect and influence how we see things, higher, lower, the original, the right teaching, the wrong teaching. The Buddha's teaching, direct from the Buddha, the other is just came after the Buddha, it's not his real teaching. We're right, you're wrong. What is that, then you can observe that in yourself. Who's right and who's wrong? And, of course, then, in terms of finding out what's right or wrong, we begin to give up trying to find out what's right on the conditioned plane, but to observe, to be mindful of conditions, to know them, to operate from a higher level of conscious awareness where we can respond to the conditions we're experiencing in skillful ways. We can still have perceptions of right and wrong, good and bad. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not denying the validity of conceptualizing or pointing to this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. But in the process, we're not told to awaken, we're merely told to grasp what's right and try to resist and get rid of and annihilate what's wrong. And then in the realm that we're living in is a conditioned realm. Your body is conditioned. Your eyes, ears, nose, tongue. The physical body is totally sensitive condition in a sense universe. We have to live in this realm of relentless, inexorable sensitivity for a lifetime. And it's not all about wonderful sensations and beauty and beautiful melodies and wonderful taste, is it? So much of our life is dealing with pain and loss, with discomfort, with growing, with sickness, with loss of loved ones, with changing conditions, with weather changes, with cultural, social changes, with wars and peace and fears and fads and fashions of the time are all changing. And they affect us because we're sensitive forms that are affected by what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. So, this is just the way it is. Putting it all into one package like that, pointing to the conditioned realm, which is non-judgmental, just pointing to its limitation. As long as we don't understand and operate from habits, from conditioning, from our own opinions about things, then we're always going to feel frustrated and unhappy and ill at ease with life. Because, that's the way it is, that's the result. Because the conditions we're attached to, you can't control the conditioned realm. Right now, you hear in the news this terrible flooding in Pakistan. And, that poor country seems to have nothing but bad luck. and, thousands of people drowned, villages, and imagine what that would be like when we're sitting in this sunny day here, worrying about whether it'll rain tomorrow. But then in Moscow, you get these warnings about all these polluting smoke clouds that hover over, infiltrate the city. They're even warning people in Moscow not to go out into the street because of all the forest fires and the drought. And how can we control? Can we? Now we have to get a committee together to control so that there won't be any forest fires or floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, typhoons, hurricanes. We can't do it, can we? We can't outlaw those things. Even none of us, all of us don't want any of those conditions. Yet that's part of living on this planet. That's the way things are, that are beyond our ability, isn't it? And so it is frightening for us, because we do feel helpless in a realm that we have very little opportunity to control for our own safety and benefit. And then during this past century, just in my lifetime, I've seen the Second World War. Fortunately I was living in America at the time, so it didn't affect us like it did here. But we were aware of this horrible war and of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We had photographs of Europe after the Second World War. Europe was just a field of destruction, and the civilized people had been doing the most ridiculous, horrible things to each other because of opinions and views, not through wisdom, not through understanding Dhamma, but through holding to their opinion. On both sides, whatever side you happen to favor, they both operate from the same ignorance. So this is why we have such things happen, and why we have war, and why there doesn't seem to be any end to it. Even when one war ends, another one starts somewhere else. So, because of this ignorance of Dhamma, and people just operating from the conditioned process, being programmed by various societies, political ideas, or cultural attitudes, or religious biases. And then, if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. So then, if we get into the absolutism of right and wrong, then logically it makes sense. If I'm right, you're wrong, then I should either convert you, force you, compel you, or shoot you. I mean, there's certain logic there. We get rid of the pests, don't we, or the enemy, to kill the enemy, destroy, is the part of the logic of right and wrong, good and bad, good and evil. Now, awareness brings us beyond, transcending good and evil, right and wrong, true and false. And this awareness brings us, is the way that we have within these very limitations we find ourselves, our own conditioning, our own cultural biases, our own opinions, our own fears and desires, our own karma, or physical conditions, social conditions, whatever they might be, is that these are not the obstructions, these are not obstacles to enlightenment. And when you begin to really appreciate that, then you begin to maybe have more interest in mindfulness meditation, because this is quite in now in societies like this one. People talk a lot about mindfulness. It's the word of the time, and it's a good sign. Because that is beginning to, maybe there is more awakening going on. Human beings are. We're no longer expecting our governments to solve all our social, economic, political problems. We don't expect David Cameron to make everything right. Unless you're a bit stupid. And President Obama, we thought, remember when he was elected, everybody was so glad, and then thought that he could right all the wrongs. And now that he really can't do that much, everybody criticizes him. The fickle public. But it's because you can't just make laws and try to make everything right. That's one of the things that we all find rather difficult about this country, is that the last government made so many laws that we're kind of, it's hard to hold a family camp here. Or to even touch a child, you could be sued. So you've got to get all kinds of insurance and kind of put people through all kinds of examinations and fear of everything, of pedophilia, of child abuse, of everything going wrong, and then trying to pass laws to make it right. And of course it just becomes very bureaucratic and dictatorial and frightening for us. So in this way, mindfulness is the way that we begin to awaken individual human beings. Rather than just make more rules to try to control the population, so there'll be no more murders, no more child abuse, no more this, no more that. Because it seems that no matter how many laws one makes, it still goes on. And it's just like, trying to, what they call herding cats, The more you kind of force them to move, the crazier they go. You can't make them go in the direction you want them to. So this is the age where, we are beginning to recognize there must be something more to life than just trying to seek happiness in this one and being rewarded in the next one for being good. Or believing that there's nothing in the next life. When you're dead, you're dead. This is an opinion, isn't it? What happens when we die? When a human being dies, what happens? We have our opinions. We all have opinions about what happens after death. So it can be, from the Christian perspective, or through believing in reincarnation, rebirth, or Muslim heaven, or going to live with Lord Krishna, or whatever Hindus believe when you die, get reincarnated. But the very fact is that we don't really know at this moment. But we know we don't know. And not knowing, you're aware of not knowing. When the opinions drop away, then there's this gap, this space. And through that space, through that gap, you begin to connect to pure conscious awareness. You begin to recognize it, rather than just going around, Ajahn Sumedho says, Ajahn Amaro says this, and the Christians say that, and the Muslims don't believe that the Christians have the right attitude, they've got another one, then the Hindus, Zoroastrians, the Jews, who's right? Or is Christopher Hitchens, Dawkins, they right? Atheists, there's nothing, Big Bang Theory, creation theory. We might be prone towards favoring, we can see that, favoring one opinion over another. Like some opinions here in my own mind or from others I favor, I incline to, and others I don't. And I'm aware of that. That awareness is what we call mindfulness. Awareness of my own preference for something, for some idea, for some way of doing something, or my aversion, my resistance to somebody's opinion that I don't like and don't agree with is like this. The way things are. That awareness then is this great gift of our humanity, is the great gift we have, an opportunity within this human lifetime to understand in a profound way, not just through believing a scenario given to you by Buddhist monks, but by actually seeing for yourself, realizing. This word realizing is an important word. We use the words common up. Do you realize what you've just said? Or talk about, but realization. What's real? What's reality? And any opinion about reality is not reality. It's an opinion. It's a preference, maybe, or a bias, or viewpoint. But that which is aware, realizes, recognizes the opinion as an opinion, that you can trust. And that's sati sampajanya, satipanya. That is totally trustworthy. But recognizing it, realizing it, because we are very strongly conditioned to operate from views and opinions. From the force of habit, from fears, from prejudices. Now we all have a lot of fear in life, because this is a fear realm. This realm is all about fear. And this sounds rather morbid, maybe, doesn't it, about love and happiness, because love is not to be dismissed, but just contemplating the conditions that we have to live in, with the human body, with its changing conditions, with its tendencies towards sickness and pain, and risks and, we try to live in a society where it's minimized, where we have a sense of security. But we all know that it's possible to walk out into the street and a lorry run over you after this talk. It's not probable, but we recognize that any of us, no matter how young and healthy we might be, our lives are not guaranteed. Old age is not a guarantee. That we are delicate, vulnerable creatures in a universe that seems vast and powerful. It's so powerful. What the Pakistanis must be experiencing now, relentless rain, floods, loss, and inability to do anything about it. Maybe some people can't even save their families. It's so sudden, so intense that they can't even rescue their children or their wives or whatever. That's scary, isn't it? That's really frightening, and yet it's nobody's fault. You can't. Immediately we want to blame somebody. It's India's fault, maybe. For the Americans. Or the tsunami a few years ago, the Sri Lanka, that was hit badly by the tsunami. And whose fault was it? And then we realize, then we can blame God, I've lost my trust in God because he wouldn't have allowed tsunamis or this terrible flooding of Pakistan. It's because our opinion of God is such, isn't it? It's not, we don't know what God is, we just have an opinion that if he's all powerful, he shouldn't allow such things to happen. But in awakening to Dhamma, it's not about asking favors from the divine or from the heavens, but a kind of humbling willingness to learn from the way life is for you in the moment. It's no matter what state you're in healthy, sickly, young, old, successful, failure, whatever, is not. These are the awakened consciousness is available to us all the time. It's timeless. So this is this talk this afternoon is merely a reflection, an encouragement for you, because we do need encouragement, because it's so easy to be intimidated and caught up into the fears and problems of modern life, family life, worldly life. We find ourselves programmed for that. Our emotional life is conditioned, is programmed for reacting to praise and blame, success and failure. We all have our, what they call buttons that you can push, something that somebody says and you immediately kind of have a overreaction. So we find what your button is. What can I say that you'll just fly into a terrible reaction? When you're living in a monastic community, you learn a lot about people's buttons. remember when I first, when it started, coming to England in 1977, I had this very, very, still quite naive and inexperienced, I'd had just 10 years as a bhikkhu. And so all my buttons hadn't been pressed yet. But over the past 34 years, there's probably a few left to be pressed. But there is a confidence in being able to notice that, where do I lose it? What is it that really threatens me or frightens me? What is it that somebody says or does that really, have an abnormal kind of reaction, a kind of overreaction to it? What is it? And I'm not, then I take an interest in that. What is it in me when somebody looks at me like that or says something like this, that I just go into kind of overreactive mode? And so then I can actually use that for cultivate, for the reality, because that's what my karma is like. Certain words, certain tones of voice, certain attitudes can you feel. Somebody says something, even in something inoffensive, in a kind of unpleasant tone of voice, of a reaction to. Or the way somebody walks. There used to be one monk, he's not here anymore, but and he had the most disturbing walk I've ever seen. And I used to sit in the reception room, and waiting for the meal and looking out that big window, and this monk would come kind of slinking in, in this kind of slimy, slinky way. And every time I felt this incredible aversion arise toward them, and just not that he did anything or said anything. That's sensitivity, isn't it? It's like we pick, how body language or tones of voice. That's what being sensitive is all about. It's just this is what we learn from. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just to be able to see the package we have to live with. It's like this. And this package I call Ajahn Sumedho's like this. It's not defending it, justifying it, but just accepting it. It's not saying I shouldn't have felt aversion to the slinky monk. Because ideally I didn't want to feel aversion, And ideally I want to have love and kindness towards everything. But emotionally I felt this incredible aversion arise when I see this monk coming towards me. And so that's just the way it is. Now I couldn't do anything about the monk, but I could do something about myself, and beginning to recognize that. Learn from it. Then I could actually let go instead of just trying to feel guilty, like I shouldn't feel such aversion. He's a good person, good monk, and I'm wrong for feeling this way. Would be one reaction, because the ideal Sumedho loves everybody equally and just accepts everybody the way they are without preference. That's the ideal Ajahn Sumedho. And then in the moment, this is what I'm feeling. It's not ideal, but it is the reality of the moment. A condition, an emotional reaction is like this. And that which is aware of the reaction. That's it, that awareness. Now, putting that in the context of this superb paradigm of the Buddha, like the noumenon, and phenomena, noumena phenomena. When you're mindful, you are this noumenon. It's impersonal. It's reality itself, but it has no quality that you can't claim it, but you can trust it. So it's intelligent, there's discernment, there's wisdom coming from this, enabled to discern the conditions we find ourselves in and learn from our own reactions to them, our own tendencies, preferences, biases, opinions, and views. So one can say this is enlightenment, seeing things clearly from this pure light of awareness. It's not a light that's filtered through distortions of perception. Consciousness, then, you can say, is light itself. Consciousness, light, wisdom. Now, these might sound very philosophical and theoretical, but in terms of the reality of this moment, the conditions are this body, this emotion, this feeling, the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking is like this. And when I reflect in this way, then I have more and more, I can see things from this perspective, from awareness rather than from just, rearranging all my views or condemning them or blaming others or trying to suppress them or trying to change them or feel guilty about them or whatever. I have a way of just seeing them. They are what they are. And through this wisdom ability to discern, then our responses to life move toward good action rather than bad. We're not basically evil, selfish, nasty little creatures. We all, there's this love, this universal acceptance and totality that we can tune into, that we can recognize from this very vulnerable position of our human limitation, human body and karma. So, what I encourage you to do, like encouragement is, my intention for these kind of talks is encouragement, because I need encouragement. We all need encouragement. Because, it's not a matter of making any problems about yourself or your particular situation or conditions. It's encouraging you to notice, to waken. I can't make you. And if I had a magic wand and could do it, I'd do it. Tap every one of you. But I can't do that. The best I can do is encourage you. So the tea is now manifesting on the servery. So I invite you all to have some tea, and then afterwards, 20 minutes or so, we can have a discussion.